Thank you for joining me again for Sefer HaMitzvos. Today we're at lesson 10, covering four mitzvahs. They're all negative commandments, so the do not do's. So that's negative commandment number 256, number 301, number 304, and number 305. And we'll start out with the first one. The first one is that we are not to mistreat widows and orphans. And this comes from Exodus 22, verse 21, which says, "You shall not afflict any widow or orphan." And this is actually taken to the extreme, the opposite. That Jewish law says we are to treat widows and orphans extremely gently, extremely nicely, with empathy for their situation. That um, we are to have the most positive interactions with them as we possibly can, and the punishment of this being not heeded is given in the Torah, where it says that God Himself will punish those who afflict the widows and orphans. So it's a very important mitzvah, and it's one that um, we don't like. We are eager to do in that situation, but it's definitely a situation we don't want to happen. um, but all the same, we need to be very kind and gentle with widows and orphans, and assist them in their situation, and that goes even if they are wealthy widows and orphans. Um, all right, number two, which is negative mitzvah number 301. You shall not go around as a talebearer among your people. That's Leviticus 19:16. We've gotten a lot out of Leviticus 19, if you've noticed, in the last few days. And so Leviticus 19:16 says, "You shall not go around as a talebearer among your people." And what that means is it's absolutely forbidden to relay information about one individual to another, even if it's true, and even if there's nothing objectionable about the actions that you're reporting. So, if you are interested in learning that in an extremely deep way, you can read the books by the Chofetz Chaim, the one book by that name, Chofetz Chaim, and the other book, Shmiras Halashon, which means guarding the tongue. And both of those go extremely deep into this mitzvah of not not gossiping, not being guilty of what Judaism calls lashon hara. That's the Hebrew for it. Um, and certainly, we don't libel another person. We don't slander them. We don't say something about them that's not true. But even something that is true um, can also fall into that category. Revenge. This is the third negative mitzvah that we're going to learn today. You shall not take revenge. That's Leviticus 19:18 once again. And what that means, or how that's interpreted, is if somebody comes to you and asks you for assistance, to borrow something, a tool, a book, something like that, and then um, the uh, the one person refuses, says, "No, I can't lend that to you." And then the next day, the guy that refused, now he comes to the first gentleman and says, I need to borrow something from you. And then that guy says, no, you can't borrow from me because you wouldn't lend to me yesterday. that is um, that is considered revenge. So we're forbidden to avenge one bad deed for another. A typical example of the revenge that the Torah prohibits. David asks Isaac to lend his scythe, and Isaac refuses. The next day, Isaac needs an axe and asks David whether he can borrow his. He says, I will not lend to you my axe, just as you did not lend me your scythe. So it is, you might not think that that's revenge, but that's what Jewish law considers revenge. All right. Finally, bearing a grudge. We're not allowed to bear a grudge. It says, you shall not bear a grudge. Leviticus 19:18 once again. And here it says, we are not allowed to bear a grudge against another, even if we never act upon that grudge. So, an example that's given here is that David asks Isaac to lend him his scythe, and Isaac refuses. The next day, Isaac needs an axe and asks David whether he can borrow his. He said, I will lend you my axe. Little twist here. Because I'm not like you. You refused to give me an axe yesterday, but I will lend to you today. So that is an example of bearing a grudge, and we're not allowed to bear a grudge. All right. So those are some very what you might consider some very light examples of these mitzvahs, but that just goes to show us if such a light example um, is true, then most of the other situations that we can think of that could be bearing a grudge or taking revenge, those are all the more forbidden. All right. Thank you so much for joining me again today. Hopefully, we're learning some things that we didn't know there were mitzvahs. We're learning a little bit about each of those. I'll be back tomorrow with God's help for only one mitzvah. We're only learning one. All right. We'll see you then. Have a great day in every way.